As the war in Ukraine continues to evolve, recent developments have drawn sharp international focus, particularly on Russia's alleged involvement in sabotage operations across Europe and the anticipated discussions between Russian President Vladimir Putin and former U.S. President Donald Trump. Accusations have surfaced that Russia orchestrated arson attacks on shopping centers in Lithuania and Poland, raising concerns about Moscow's broader strategy to destabilize the region and undermine support for Ukraine. Lithuanian authorities have claimed that two individuals allegedly acting on behalf of Russian military intelligence were compensated with €10,000 and a BMW to carry out these arson operations. These attacks were intended to intimidate the societies of both Lithuania and Poland, as well as to compel them and the European Union to reconsider their military and financial support for Ukraine. Lithuanian prosecutors have classified these incidents as acts of terrorism, and they have emphasized that the suspects' actions were aimed at destabilizing vital political and economic structures within both countries. In the midst of these allegations, Donald Trump has announced plans to speak with Putin, suggesting that discussions will include significant topics such as territorial divisions and asset allocations in Ukraine. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov has confirmed the scheduled call, although he refrained from elaborating on its content. This forthcoming dialogue has reignited discussions about the potential for a ceasefire in peace negotiations, which have been complicated by Russia's ongoing military advances, particularly in the Kursk region. Military analyst Michael Clark highlighted that the Russian forces, having successfully expelled Ukrainian troops from the Kursk area, are expected to redeploy to other critical frontline locations, specifically Pokrovsk. This city is pivotal as it serves as a logistical hub for Ukraine, and its capture would severely disrupt Ukrainian supply lines. The implications of such a shift in troop deployment are significant. As Clark noted, it took 60,000 Russian troops to force Ukraine out of Kursk, good quality troops. The successful relocation of these forces could alter the dynamics of the conflict in the coming weeks. As tensions mount, the United Kingdom has taken a proactive stance, with Prime Minister Keir Starmer recently convening a coalition of the willing comprising over 30 countries to discuss peacekeeping troop deployments in Ukraine should a truce be reached. This coalition underscores the increasing international commitment to supporting Ukraine amid fears of Russia's continued aggression. Starmer's remarks indicated that a significant number of nations are prepared to contribute to peacekeeping efforts, which could be crucial in stabilizing the region if a ceasefire is achieved. On the other hand, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has reiterated that Russia remains the primary obstacle to peace. He criticized the Kremlin's refusal to accept a proposed 30-day ceasefire, asserting that only Russia wants war. As negotiations loom, the question of how to effectively engage with a Russian leadership that maintains maximalist territorial claims over Ukraine remains contentious. The situation in Ukraine is further complicated by Russia's demands for NATO to exclude Ukraine from any future membership agreements. Russian officials, including Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, have rejected the idea of NATO peacekeepers in Ukraine, framing any such deployment as direct involvement in the conflict. As the conflict continues, the international community remains on alert, weighing the implications of these discussions and the ongoing military maneuvers. The potential for a peace agreement hangs in the balance, with both sides seemingly entrenched in their positions. The outcomes of the upcoming Putin-Trump conversation, alongside the actions of NATO and the coalition of the willing, could significantly influence the trajectory of the war and the future of Ukraine. The coming days will be critical as stakeholders navigate the complex landscape of diplomacy, warfare, and humanitarian needs amid a protracted conflict. In a complex and evolving landscape, the ongoing conflict between Russia and Ukraine continues to escalate, with significant military and diplomatic developments reported on March 16, 2025. The situation is marked by a blend of military engagements, territorial negotiations, and international diplomatic maneuvers, reflecting the intricate dynamics at play in the region. U.S. National Security Advisor Mike Waltz announced on March 16 that Ukraine would be offered unspecified security guarantees in exchange for territorial concessions, raising questions about the implications of such negotiations. Waltz's comments made during discussions about achieving a lasting peace in Ukraine suggest a strategic shift that acknowledges the reality of the situation on the ground. This phrase has been frequently utilized by Russian officials to justify their territorial claims and ongoing military operations. The juxtaposition of U.S. diplomatic efforts with Russian ambitions underscores the complexities of any potential ceasefire agreement, particularly as the current front lines lack the strategic depth Ukraine requires to defend against renewed aggression. The frontline situation remains precarious, with Russian forces positioned dangerously close to key Ukrainian cities such as Kherson, Zaporizhia, and Kharkiv. Analysts warn that a ceasefire along existing lines could allow Russian troops to regroup and prepare for further offensives, thereby jeopardizing Ukraine's defense capabilities. The construction of infrastructure, including highways and railways, aims to solidify Russia's logistical support for its operations in Ukraine, further complicating the prospect of a stable peace. Despite ongoing diplomatic engagement, Russian officials have shown no inclination to make concessions regarding their territorial claims, which include all of occupied Ukraine and parts of unoccupied territories. President Vladimir Putin and other Kremlin officials have reiterated their demands for Ukraine to cede significant regions, maintaining their maximalist stance. In this context, the Kremlin's narrative framing any future peace discussions reflects a calculated effort to reinforce its territorial ambitions even as hostilities persist. The United Kingdom has taken a proactive stance, convening a virtual coalition of the willing summit to solidify international support for Ukraine and strategize on peace efforts. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer emphasized the coalition's commitment to maintaining pressure on Russia and supplying military aid to Ukraine. Reports suggest that 35 countries within the coalition have agreed to provide logistical support and military resources to deter future Russian offensives, highlighting a united front against the Kremlin's aggressive posture. Meanwhile, military operations on the ground remain intense, with both Ukrainian and Russian forces continuing to engage in combat across various fronts. Recent reports indicate that Ukrainian forces have made tactical advances near Borova, while Russian troops have conducted operations in Sumy Oblast and continue their push in the Donetsk region. The dynamic nature of these engagements reflects the ongoing volatility of the conflict as both sides adapt to shifting conditions and pursue their respective objectives. In a related development, a nighttime drone attack by Russian forces resulted in significant damage in Odessa Oblast, underscoring the persistent threat to civilian infrastructure. The attack targeted a disused warehouse, damaging a kindergarten and residential buildings, resulting in power outages for hundreds of consumers. This incident exemplifies the ongoing risks faced by civilians amid the military conflict and highlights the broader implications of the war on everyday life in Ukraine. The Ukrainian Air Force reported that on the night of March 17, Russian forces launched an extensive drone strike involving 174 Shahid-type drones, of which 90 were shot down by Ukrainian air defenses. This attack affected multiple regions including Kyiv and Dnipropetrovsk, causing widespread power outages and further straining Ukraine's energy infrastructure. As the conflict continues to evolve, the international community remains vigilant, monitoring both the military dynamics and the diplomatic engagements that could shape the future of Ukraine. Future developments will likely hinge on the outcomes of negotiations and the ongoing military efforts on both sides, as the quest for a sustainable resolution to the conflict remains as urgent as ever. In a significant diplomatic development, U.S. President Donald Trump is set to speak with Russian President Vladimir Putin on Tuesday, March 18, 2025, in what many see as a pivotal moment in the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. The planned conversation, which Trump disclosed while en route to Washington from Florida, aims to explore potential avenues for ending the war that has embroiled Ukraine since Russia's full-scale invasion in February 2022. "We want to see if we can bring that war to an end," Trump stated, emphasizing that substantial groundwork has been laid in recent discussions. He characterized the forthcoming talks as a chance to negotiate over land and power plants, hinting at the complex issues surrounding territorial concessions and resource management that have become central to peace negotiations. This call follows recent meetings involving Trump's special envoy Steve Witkoff, who indicated that discussions with Russian officials had been positive and focused on finding solutions. The Kremlin has confirmed the meeting, although officials have refrained from elaborating on specific agenda items, maintaining a cautious approach. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov noted, "We never get ahead of events," further underscoring the unpredictable nature of such high-stakes negotiations. As both sides prepare for the dialogue, tensions remain high. On the battlefield, Russian forces have reportedly made advances in eastern Ukraine, tightening their grip on contested regions. Trump's recent remarks indicate that negotiators have been discussing the dividing up of certain assets, raising concerns about the implications for Ukrainian sovereignty and territorial integrity. Russia's Deputy Foreign Minister Alexander Grushko has articulated the Kremlin's demands, insisting on ironclad security guarantees that would ensure Ukraine's neutrality and exclude it from NATO membership. Grushko's statements reflect Moscow's position that any lasting peace must include strict stipulations regarding Ukraine's military capabilities. Only through their formation will it be possible to achieve lasting peace in Ukraine, he asserted, signaling Russia's steadfast refusal to yield in negotiations. Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky remains focused on strengthening his country's military preparedness. On the same day as Trump's announcement, Zelensky met with military leaders to discuss frontline strategies and reinforce Ukraine's defense capabilities. The urgency of his message was clear: strengthening the army is a constant priority and there can be no steps back in this regard, he emphasized as he prepares for upcoming talks with European allies, including a meeting in London. Internationally, the conversation between Trump and Putin comes against a backdrop of skepticism from European nations. Leaders are wary of Trump's previous overtures to Putin and his controversial stance on Ukraine. French President Emmanuel Macron recently underscored that Ukraine's sovereignty must be respected, stating, "If Ukraine requests allied forces to be on its territory, it is not up to Russia to accept or reject them." As diplomatic efforts intensify, the situation on the ground remains precarious, with reports of ongoing aerial strikes and military actions. The stakes are high, and the outcomes of the upcoming talks could have far-reaching implications not only for Ukraine but also for global security dynamics. Looking ahead, the effectiveness of Trump's approach and the response from both sides will be critical in determining the course of the conflict. Should these discussions lead to a ceasefire or a more comprehensive peace agreement, it would represent a significant shift in the geopolitical landscape. However, the road to peace remains fraught with challenges as both the Ukrainian and Russian governments navigate their respective domestic pressures and international expectations. As the world watches, the potential for resolution hangs delicately in the balance. In a stark reflection of ongoing tensions in Eastern Europe, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has accused Russian President Vladimir Putin of stealing another week of war by dodging a ceasefire proposal that could potentially halt the conflict. This assertion came shortly after a significant diplomatic meeting in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, where the United States and Ukraine jointly proposed a 30-day ceasefire aimed at paving the way for a more comprehensive peace agreement. Zelensky's comments highlight the persistent struggle for peace amid a backdrop of military escalations and delicate negotiations. Following the talks in Jeddah, where U.S. negotiators engaged with both Ukrainian and Russian representatives, the proposed ceasefire was met with a vague response from Putin. While he expressed support for the idea of a ceasefire, he simultaneously laid out additional conditions that effectively complicated the proposal's implementation. After the talks in Jeddah and the American proposal for a ceasefire on the front line, Russia stole almost another week, a week of war that only Russia wants, as Zelensky remarked on social media, underscoring his frustration with the Kremlin's tactics. As the war enters its third year, both Ukraine and Russia are maneuvering to avoid blame for the ongoing hostilities, with Zelensky's administration striving to project an image of readiness for peace. Andriy Yermak, head of Zelensky's presidential office, reiterated the Ukrainian response to continued Russian aggression, stating Russia continues to attack. Ukraine is responding to the attacks and will respond until Putin stops the war. This sentiment reflects the broader tactical stance of Ukraine, which seeks both to defend its territory and to engage diplomatically. In conjunction with these diplomatic efforts, Zelensky has announced a significant reshuffle within Ukraine's military leadership, appointing Andriy Natov as the new chief of the General Staff of the Armed Forces. This change comes as Ukraine faces mounting pressure in key combat zones, particularly in the Kursk region, where recent Russian offensives have reportedly recaptured territory previously held by Ukrainian forces. Defense Minister Rustem Umerov emphasized the importance of this transformation, stating, "We are systematically transforming the armed forces of Ukraine to enhance their combat effectiveness." This restructuring aims to maximize the operational capabilities of Ukrainian forces amidst ongoing conflict. As fighting intensifies along various fronts, including a notable resurgence in the Donetsk region, both sides have continued their long-range strikes, further complicating the landscape for potential peace negotiations. Reports indicate that Ukraine's Air Force successfully intercepted a significant number of Russian drones, while Russia's defense ministry claims to have downed numerous Ukrainian drones in return. The ongoing military exchanges serve as a stark reminder of the challenges facing both diplomatic efforts and battlefield realities. The geopolitical implications of this situation extend beyond the immediate conflict, as U.S. President Donald Trump has signaled a willingness to engage with Putin in the coming days, suggesting a potential intervention from Washington could alter the course of discussions. Trump stated a lot of work had been done toward a potential agreement over the weekend and expressed optimism about the prospect of ending the war. As the situation develops, the international community continues to watch closely. The Vatican has also expressed hope for a just resolution to the conflict, free from preconditions that could undermine peace efforts. With both military and diplomatic avenues being actively pursued, the coming weeks will be crucial in determining whether a sustainable ceasefire can be achieved or if hostilities will escalate, further prolonging the suffering and instability in the region. As Zelensky and his administration work to navigate these turbulent waters, the call for effective diplomacy remains more pressing than ever.